Maxim, we dedicate this entire and very special episode to you, to your memory, and to all the brave and courageous individuals, all the valiant guys who selflessly gave their precious lives, making the ultimate sacrifice in the defense and protection of the Kursk region. They are now at this very moment situated in one of the designated and established settlements, a secure and operational location where the highly skilled and dedicated medical evacuation team is diligently and tirelessly working. These are the remarkable individuals whose stories, whose profound heroism, whose unwavering dedication, and whose vital work we will endeavor to discuss and highlight in great detail today. We aim to tell their compelling story, to shed light on their extraordinary heroism, and to thoroughly describe their continuous and essential work, which has been actively and consistently ongoing since the month of August in the strategically important Sujansky district, specifically within the broader and critical Kursk direction. Their efforts are truly commendable and deserve our utmost recognition and gratitude. The guys agreed to give us an interview and show us their archive videos.
This is what our soldiers' daily life looks like. We evacuated a critical patient. We're driving, things are flying, it's noisy, we have to get out, it's a shame, there are still people left. The village, they held on, lived there, it was a cozy little house, a beautiful fence, and now nothing is left. It's hard, it's tough, it's difficult. We got caught a couple of times by a sabotage and reconnaissance group. They were in a van transporting 2 critical patients. They had a pickup with a machine gun and a quad bike, and we were driving me, my shotgun, and a 39 Sport automatic. Okay, there were 3 of us. 3 severely wounded soldiers, already reloaded, cocked the bolt. I didn't lose my composure. Sonia, my comrade and friend I mentioned, froze up, he stopped, hit the brakes. I didn't lose my composure, I just raised my hand and waved not at me. I just raised my hand and waved not at me. I told him, step on it, and we took off, drove about 200 to 300 meters away. By the time they realized and started shooting at us from behind, it was already too late.
Right now, our sappers are working on demining the area. We had the opportunity to witness this process. And, of course, to see the areas where the bodies of the fallen, the dead, and civilians remain. Enemy soldiers killed in action.
Here, in this area, a lot of anti-personnel fragmentation mines, the so-called POMs, were scattered around. They were dropped from drones. Who scattered them? I don't know. Well, there were also remote-controlled ones here, but my guys have already destroyed everything. And all these little craters are from them. The sappers have cleared everything, but the density was very high, so be careful. Here they are. Here in the barn, we found the body of a civilian, possibly the owner of the house. Here, an old man.
He was hiding.
Here the guys are diligently working, our own guys. There's a significant amount to clear here.
You know...
No detonation.
Understood, I completely understand.
Yes. came in, it was obvious because they were all lying along the road with severe shrapnel wounds with their heads pierced and so on. Yes, this area was like a gray zone. That's how it was for us. For a long time we worked in the LNR and DNR. You were also in hotspots like Klishivka, Andriivka, Otradivka, Bakhmut. And the situation there was exactly the same. Only here, of course, when we were working, so many. There were no birds. A lot of things moved into the air. And sappers have to keep their eyes on the ground, but listen up above with their ears.
And under your feet, too.
Everything under your feet, yes. And you have to clear it.
We have to take these kinds of paths to get from one part of the city to another. We have to take these kinds of paths to get from one part of the city to another. Before this, the soldiers would just walk the whole way through this cold water up to their knees. Before this, the soldiers would just walk the whole way through this cold water up to their knees. Now we have good condition. We have a drone detector. I'll show you. It's always lit up red.
Yeah, where we're entering now is fine. It's located down there, quite a bit further away from here. That's fiber optic cable, and that one is an unexploded one. That's where you used to go through.
Up to your knees, or you had to swim across.
Across the bridge, you'd go down by that support and step over. When you had to go between two sections, you had to get into the water between the sections.
Expose a wire, milk.
You know, it was a bit warmer back then. Got it.
We have our own communications, our own team, our own platoon. We set up antennas, connect, and provide comms to the frontline guys. And at the same time, sometimes we have to shoot down drones without a special rifle or a semi-automatic, especially in the forest. Well, it's tough because there are drops, kamikaze drones flying in, guys are dying, and I think by shooting them down, we're also doing something useful.
Have you shot down a lot, do you think?
Well, I've personally shot down 27 myself. I've been deeply into hunting basically ever since my childhood, and I truly love going out into the wilderness whenever I have the available time.
That's quite interesting. How exactly did you manage to acquire it? Could you please elaborate and tell us more about it?
As for how I got it, our platoon commander gave it to me.
You know, yes, absolutely anything and everything is truly possible. As you explore and venture forth, you will undoubtedly come across some truly fascinating and remarkably interesting specimens, each with their own unique characteristics and stories to tell.
I've seen old guns, even hammer shotguns that you can't find anymore. Guys, this particular one is also from the very same series. The specific year is clearly marked, although I don't precisely remember. I believe it is indeed from the year 1981, this remarkable weapon. Tula, a historically significant city located in Russia, is renowned for its exceptional craftsmanship, particularly in the production of high-quality weaponry. The Tula-made weapons, known for their durability and precision, have a long and distinguished history, dating back to periods even before the significant events associated with Puyu.
Lockney together with the fighters from the Irish Shock Squad. We came to this settlement to show you what's left of it. We came to this settlement to show you what's left of it. I hope the weather will be on our side now. I hope the weather will be on our side now, will favor us. We'll calmly, without any particular adventures, walk around the settlement and show you everything. I've armed myself with a bullet blade. We'll be going on foot, because our car is too big a target for the enemy to operate here with both drones, classic ones, analog as well as fiber optic ones.
Well, let's wait for it to pass and then we'll move on. Remnants of the enemy's humanitarian aid.
Yes.
Let's wait a little bit. They definitely won't hit us directly.
So the Grom's detector showed an approach scale of 3.5, which means it's already a critical moment. We went down to the basement, waiting it out in short dashes like this. We're moving along the small ravine to safely show you what we're seeing. Right now we're in a former dugout where the enemy used to be. Here we can see humanitarian aid deliveries from the Poltava region, Zinkiev. It says it was sent by Nova Pochta. So that's how they lived. Basically, our soldiers live in the same conditions. Well, the enemy was, of course, driven out of here. Now we're waiting. We saw a flash, as our guy said.
Someone dragged the drone over. There was a sound just now.
A drone from the observation window. And it's clearly not ours.
Maybe we won't check for now. We're waiting to see what happens.
We're waiting. These are the conditions we have to work in. But we're confident that everything will be fine. Everything will be all right. There's fiber optic cable here. You can see the fiber optic cable now. These are the threads that shine very bright. Of course, the camera doesn't capture it, but the fields are covered with them. And accordingly, we can see some mystical, magical glow along the road to Malaya Loknia. And here are the large cylindrical spools from the fiber optic cable, which in fact are quite impressive and essential for the distribution of data.
Take a look.
Quietly silent, but you don't have to show it. Well, anyway, I'll continue. You see the conditions we're working in. Here, in fact, are the spools from the drone on the fiber optic cable, with which our brave guys struck this enemy tank.
Mainly, you can see the equipment through the goggles.
Yes,
When you see it live, when you can sit on your trophy, what's that like?
but honestly, it's a truly strange and peculiar feeling, quite unusual and inherently ambiguous, because through the immersive goggles you don't really perceive the true scale, you don't fully grasp the immense size, so to speak, of this colossal monster. But at the same time you understand what kind of harm and damage it can inflict on our brothers in the infantry, on our assault troops.
What was the situation like here, probably?
The situation was extremely difficult. Unfortunately, there were a lot of... Well, you can see for yourself by...
Right now, it's tough.
Yes, you can see for yourself that judging by the situation, there's not a stone left standing. And over there on the left is the legendary detention center. When the village was liberated, they found the body of a fallen hero of Russia, the commander of the detention center's defense back during the battles of August and September. So the fighting for this settlement has always been intense. You could say that the main objective for both the enemy and us was to take it, because we have the commanding height here. This is where the main operations are conducted from, the main one.
How do you knock down the fiber like that? How do you cut the fiber optic?
Listen, well, it's really big, I can't hit it when hunting. We watch our step.
Very careful and exercise extreme caution in this situation.
Huh? Fighters used to live here too. They've completely dried up. After all, there is indeed God, and He truly sees absolutely everything, and accordingly, that's precisely it. He guides us, He gives us strength. Well, here the unfortunate remains of the invader. She's been lying here, quite undisturbed, for about 2 full weeks now. Notice the bright sun and the expansive field already. This entire area is covered by fiber optic cable. Consequently, we absolutely cannot drive directly to every single area by vehicle, which makes access quite challenging. So, consequently, we are compelled to unload our essential supplies and equipment several kilometers away from the actual work position, with arduous shuttle steps and repeated shuttle runs, all while encased in heavy body armor and full operational gear, and under the constant ever-present threat of enemy drones and artillery fire, we meticulously move out to our designated deployment positions. All of this, accordingly, stretches out over a very long period of time, requires enormous effort, and demands total dedication from every member of the crew. Motivation. People understand that, especially here on Kursk soil, this takes on a new meaning because, after all, this is our land, our homeland. You see, we ourselves, as so to speak, you could say we're locals from Kursk. We've been to Kursk so many times before the war, before the enemy came here, so many familiar places, and never, even in our youth, when we were young. In my younger years, I never thought or expected that I would have to fight for my homeland, for my own land. Not right here, on the territory of my own country, my homeland. The Battle of Kursk became something sacred for us, a matter of principle, you could say, the cause of our generation. I didn't want us to be unable to say that this wasn't everything for our country.